Hello from the Flanagan Homestead. This video that you're going to see today was originally supposed to be part of a video where I was going to talk about positives and negatives of starting a Christmas tree farm and my story of getting started, and you might compare your situation. But the other video was getting a little bit long, so I do have the three prominent positives and negatives. I'll put a link in the description if you want to see that video. This one is just about my story on how my grandpa helped me get started in Christmas tree farming, and I did it on my property for a few years, and then I've had a commercial farm for about 20 years now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and so here's my story, how I got into Christmas trees, and I'm thankful that I did, and I'm still doing it. Now, my story is probably not unlike many of yours that are out there viewing. You know, I've enjoyed having this channel, sharing my experiences and helping some people, but I enjoy hearing your stories. And please share where you're farming if you see this, and what kind of trees you're growing and whatnot. I've had many people from different nations and all over the place share where they're at. But anyway, my story starts with my Grandpa Mckay. He was a county extension agent. He lived up in Olympia, and he helped farmers all over that area. And there was one farm that he just fell in love with when he was helping the farmer, and he just told him, if you ever want to sell this, let me know. And the guy was actually a chicken farmer. And years later, the guy said, hey, Bob, I'm ready to sell. Do you want it? And my grandpa said, yes. So my grandpa bought the farm in Rochester, and he started growing Christmas trees, and he did well. He did several, he got a little bit later in life, but he did mostly wholesale, but he had several cuttings where he'd plant and then cut and replant and go from there. But one of the reasons I fell in love with Christmas trees is it was a family event. I have a lot of relatives. I live in southern Washington. Most of my relatives on my mom's side, Grandpa Mckay's side, live up north, and we didn't see them a whole lot. But one time we would see them every year is we'd all come to Grandpa's farm, which was in between, on the same day, and we'd all come and get a Christmas tree, and he'd have a big fire out there, and we'd all do potluck style. We'd bring some tables, and there'd be the chili and the traditional warm winter stuff. And my uncle that lived on Puget Sound, and there was an oyster bed there, would bring oysters, and we'd cook oysters over the fire. That was just part of the tradition. And we'd have hot chocolate, and everybody went and got a Christmas tree, and they cut it, and we stood around the fire, and I visited with my cousins and played with my cousins, and my aunts and uncles visited, and it was just a happy time. And we didn't get together and share presents and that type of thing. We weren't that close vicinity-wise, and we all had big enough families that we didn't want to do that, but we were all really happy to see each other. And that's part of the reason I fell in love with Christmas trees, is it was a family event that brought the extended family together, and we got to see each other. And so that goes back to my point of it's about people. The Christmas tree farming is about people, and share the joy, share the love. So anyway, as my grandpa got older, he lived to be 100, and he was still harvesting his Christmas trees at 90 and working at them himself at 90. So I came and started actually helping my grandpa and on his last set of trees, and gained a little bit of knowledge. And then as I bought my property out here, on the property that I'm sitting here, I had a little bit of land, but it's really too steep to Christmas tree farm and everything. But Grandpa knew I had an interest, so he gave me 100 or 100 some trees. I don't remember the exact amount. And I planted them on my property down below, and they did really well. They grew well. I sheared them. They had nice shape, and I was really proud of them. But because I don't really have even access to, people could drive up to my house, but my trees are even down farther. You had to ride a quad down there. And so I couldn't open it up for commercial area, but I would do similarly to the family tradition. I told friends, you want a free tree? Come on up here. And but we're going to build a fire. You have to bring something to eat with me, or we have to share a s'more with me. You don't get to come and take a tree and run away. We're going to visit. And so a lot of friends came up and got a free tree, and we visited, and they had a great time, friends and family. And so Grandpa Mckay's tradition kind of continued on my property. And so then I was like, I would really like to do this commercially and grow this into a business, but I couldn't do it with my existing property. So as many as you know, I'm also a school teacher, and I was sitting around the lunch table one day and just talking about my Christmas trees and offering them to friends, and just saying how much I enjoy Christmas trees, and I wish I had land that I could grow them on. I just can't find a good piece of property. And one of my good friends at the school that had just transferred to our school that year is like, really? He goes, I have land, but I have no knowledge on how to grow Christmas trees. And I said, well, I have some knowledge, but I have no land. He said, well, let's become partners. And so to this day, we're 20 years later, we still don't have a written contract, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but it has not become an issue. We work together. We split costs, work, income 50-50. Sometimes, you know, he's more available and he gets more work done, and sometimes I'm more available and I get more work done. But we're in this together. So 20 years later, we're still doing the Christmas trees together. So as I said, we started years ago when the kids were young. Barry and I did all the planting. We planted 1 acre first and started letting those grow up. And then we just started planting more and more trees because we knew we wanted to be a U-cut Christmas tree farm. So we got that first acre in. We knew the first year we wouldn't have a ton of customers. And you know, I think we planted about 1,500 trees the first year. It wasn't exactly an acre, but it was nobles and grand firs, and we started growing those, and we've expanded since then. And we continued to grow them. And then, you know, it was probably 6 years later we did our first sale. And it was really small because we didn't have that many that were big enough yet, but we had enough and we had friends in. And then from then on, we just grew bigger and bigger. And right now we have way more customers than we have trees, but that's a good situation. But as I was saying, some things that you might want to consider that affect you. So in our area where my Christmas tree farm is, I don't own the land myself, but it's a good thing, bad thing. The land value has become incredibly high. It's right on I-5 between just 20 miles north of Portland. And, you know, people have said Portland to Seattle is going to be one city on I-5 eventually. It's just growing together. And so the Ridgefield area is a lot of affluent people are building houses. So a lot of the people that had Christmas tree farms in the area said, why am I working so hard to make money growing Christmas trees when I have 10 acres of land that's worth a whole lot of money? So they're selling it off. And that's been good for me because now there's way more customers, and quite honestly, the homes that they're building here are really nice. And so there are people with money and lots of customers and less competition on the tree farm. So if I have trees, I don't have a hard time selling them. But you might want to ask yourself, if you're going into Christmas tree farming, where am I going to be for 10 years from now? What's the market going to be like? Is there enough people here? Are fake Christmas trees going to be the thing then? Those are all things that you need to consider. But our market is growing and growing and growing. And Barry, whose family owns the land, says he wants to keep growing Christmas trees and keep people from coming right down in on them. He wants to have some space. But I will tell you that 5 acres of the land owned by his family, he had an offer of $1.1 million for 5 acres of bare land. Which, yeah, I can't comprehend that, but I don't know what the market's like for you. But I mean, it was absolutely one of the nicest pieces of property around here. It's up on top of the hill, looks down into the valley, into the river, and at the mountains in the background. But anyway, there was a couple things that held up that deal. Actually, they've lowered the price now to $835,000 for 5 bare acres, but that doesn't affect the tree farm. But so, you know, the desire to sell off some of the land is going to be there. So I have to be aware of that. The other thing is, you know, a family member did build a house right in the middle of the Christmas tree farm, so we lost about an acre of land there. But then we're now expanding out into more of the family property, and so we're actually expanding our field right now. So that's kind of a summary of where we're at on a real brief overview of how my Christmas tree farm came about. Things you might want to consider, you know, are you going to be on land long enough? Are you going to want to keep it in trees for 20 years plus? Are you going to want to sell it off? Are you going to have help? There's a lot of things to think about on the Christmas tree farming, but it's been good to me. I have no regrets. If I could go back in time, I would definitely do it again. And if you decide to be a Christmas tree farmer and I can help you in any way, let me know.